What is up? Welcome to the American Peloton. I am Jonathan Crane, and I need a new sign on. I still haven't come up with anything snappy. And this has not Ben. Ben has got COVID, but I think I've got someone just as good today.
I
Who are
hope so.
you?
Big shoes to fill.
Introduce yourself. Who are you?
Oh, yeah, how about that? My name is James Grady. I'm the founder of Formula Fixed, formerly Mission Crit. Done a bunch of bike stuff, done a bunch of stuff that you might have seen but might not know I was behind.
Yeah, that was certainly the case for me. Like putting a name to a face. I was like, oh yeah, Mission Crit. I know that. Oh yeah, I know. Red Bull Bay Climb, you probably don't even know this, but some guys in Huntsville, Alabama, that were like weirdly mostly like enduro racers, but they saw Red Bull Bay Climb and were like, oh, that's cool. Like elimination style races up a hill. We could do that. So they did like that format in Huntsville, Alabama in 2017 or 18 or something. So that was resonating, across the country, and I did it. I did win that event.
Did you? Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a
I'm
big
always
one on my
surprised to learn where.
Palmares.
Yeah, step aside, Cat One. You have the Huntsville, Alabama hill climb winner.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that at the top of my resume.
Should
Uh,
we? I think you led off the last episode by announcing that you are now a Cat One. Do we need to circle back to that? Do you have a good
uh,
sign on yet?
so I have my points for a Cat One as of the Saturday of Gateway. I still haven't actually sent the email to USAC, but they're all in there. I'm gonna get
So
that done.
are we allowed to throw around the S word?
What is the S word?
Sandbag?
Sandbagger?
Yeah. I
It
guess
would
there's
be
not
sandbagging
a
if I
lot
had
of
still,
racing, is there?
yeah, if I was still doing any races, then yes. That's part of the lack of motivation to get it done is it's fully cross season now. I'm in cross mode fully. I put the Dugasts on today. Got a ride on them. So,
Excellent.
yeah, we're
Excellent.
switching gears very
All right.
literally.
All
Um
right, Jonathan, who do you want to talk shit about? That's what we're here for, right?
yeah, yeah,
All
definitely.
right. How about that Tolly guy? Like, how handsome is he? Like, it's
Yeah, what the
disgusting.
hell?
What?
Uh I
We could
get
all be
so
that charming.
That's a good place to start, though, is, I told you I was like, you're an interesting dude. I feel like, so for the audience, I guess we first like met at Tulsa this year, and you were like in the start pin of the race, and I talked your ear off for like 30, 45 minutes. So I feel like we're gonna get off track. So I'm gonna start us on track with
Sure.
Formula Fixed, which is the race you have coming up, which I believe Chris Tully is on the start list.
He is the start list. Please, let's get that right. Also, shout out to the driveway. And he's only on this t-shirt like 3 times, which
Wow.
if he tried, he could have done a lot better. So, Formula Fixed is a fixed gear elimination race on an indoor go-kart track. We have a showcase event on Friday here in beautiful Burbank, California. The show time is 8 p.m. It will be live streamed not only on YouTube, but it's going out through various streaming influential streamers and stuff being facilitated by a company called eFuse. Also, for those of you into Twitch and stuff, Terry B will be live streaming starting at 2 p.m. I think he's also going to be live streaming tomorrow. We've got a party at Rafa in Santa
Cool.
Monica from 7 to 10. Anybody listening to this is welcome to attend.
Wow.
VIP treatment for the fans of the American Peloton podcast.
Yeah, mention
Yeah,
us for free something.
for,
Uh,
for a free poke in the eye. That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, I wanted to get that in early. So this is a test event for a league that, you're testing the concept. T Let's get into the format of the race on Friday or Saturday,
Yeah.
the
So
11th.
the format on Friday.
Friday?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another thing we can talk about is like visibility on the different days of
Hmm.
the week, and like the strength and who actually is the audience in this thing. So the event on Friday is an elimination race on a go kart track. I've done two of these events under the banner, under the Red Bull banner up in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
We call them the Red Bull short circuit. I pitched that idea to Red Bull and finally got them to do it after a number of years of haranguing them. And we did it twice, and it was unbelievable. So the format of this is a tournament style elimination race. And for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to race on the track yet, an elimination race is where in our version, we have 8 riders starting, and on every lap, the last rider across the finish line gets eliminated until the last rider is standing. Riders go through 3 rounds of qualifiers. Based on their point totals, the top 24 riders in each of the 2 categories will advance to the semifinals. The top 2 riders from each of the 3 semifinal rounds will advance to the finals. And then 3rd and 4th place from the semifinals will advance to a redemption round. And the top
Nice.
2 riders from the redemption round will, it's like a repechage, right? They will
Yeah.
advance to the finals, putting 8 people in the finals. I know that there's a lot of math involved in there, and I know
No,
that cyclists aren't
I got it.
typically good at math, but all the info is on the website. But basically, the format is super easy to follow. Unlike other racing, the last person standing across the finish line is the winner. Tournament style is familiar to anybody who plays sports in America, and I think that the format, it's short, 6-minute heats. It's fast, fun, nothing but excitement. I think
Nice.
it's really cool. And just what we're doing and how we're anybody who's familiar with racing in America, you show up to USAC race, it's 8 hours long, 12 hours long. What we're doing is a 2-hour show. Doors start at 7, the race starts at 8, and we're done by 10 o'clock.
Nice. And you've got kind of heats going the whole time, and it's pretty obvious. I think you did mention points, but I'm assuming those points are awarded. It's not like preems. It's not like a points race on the track. It's literally if you're the last person eliminated, you get the most points, and those go down the bracket, right?
That's right. So it's based on finishing order. If you're first in your heat, that's 30 points, and then we work our way down the list.
So that I've got a bunch of questions here and that's making me want to jump around, but I think that's I'm gonna stay on track here. And the one I've got up top is kind of like what on this podcast or this show. I try not to call it a podcast, even though it is available as a podcast, because we're also on Twitch right now and YouTube and all the various formats, everywhere I can think to put it. But on this show, we're always talking about like what is the next thing in American racing? Are we trending up? Are we trending down? How are crits doing? How are road races doing? And we're always trying to kind of like solve a problem that's maybe not necessarily like solvable with one. There's no single solution to any of this stuff. But what is your pitch in terms of like what hole is this filling?
I think cycling in America suffers from poor product market fit. And I think that this really fills the void in terms of cycling entertainment content.
Yeah.
As I said, the format is very easy to understand. The heats are short. It's very fast, lots of action, no downtime.
So you think
I think that it's go
the
ahead, sorry.
market fit thing, we talk a lot about attention spans on this show, and it's and we're generally making the like crits versus road race argument, and you're going even further in that direction. Like these heats will be much shorter than a crit generally.
That absolutely. You should read my business plan. It has all of this stuff. I'm sure it's a lot of the same things that you
I
found, but
did, I'm
people's
trying to
attention
tee you
spans
up.
are
I'm trying to give you these
yeah,
set the
there's
ball on the
like
tee for you.
people's attention spans are like 8 seconds. Like it's insane how short they are, and they're not getting any longer.
Hmm.
I did the math, and in a 60-minute crit, if you and I, Jonathan, were to stand on the side of any 60-minute crit in America, we see roughly 8.5% of the entire race.
Right.
It's like really thrilling as the riders go by. They move a lot of wind. It's really colorful, but you have to think of it in terms of story, right? Like a bike race is a story, just like a football game is a story, like a car race is a story. There's a start, there's a middle, there's an end, There's winners, losers, heroes, villains.
Mm-hmm.
And if you and I are spectating in person, we could be at Tulsa and it's great. Like it's an amazing event, so much energy. But in terms of the story, we see so little of it
Mm-hmm.
that it provides no real value for the spectators. So like how do you fix that?
Yeah.
I think the way that we're presenting it by centralizing the action so that spectators can see the entire story the entire time is one step in that direction.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. One thing that I find myself doing at like almost every crit, even this like, small town center crit, some random person is sitting there watching and you hear them saying to each other, saying to the people they're there with, like, I wonder how long they go for, or like, why is he doing that, or what, whatever. You hear him asking a question, and I'll always just turn to those people and start answering the questions because I like want them to understand and be. It's like you can only enjoy it there's a ceiling on how much you can enjoy it until you kind of understand more about it. So you're removing some of those things that people don't understand and just simplifying it, which I think makes a lot of sense for the American audience. Um, that is not a question. It's just kind of me chewing on what you just said.
No, it's great. And I'm going to throw a lot of info at you. So I
Please
apologize in
do.
advance. But
No, that
the other
that's exactly what we're here for. I feel like the crux of my channel, like I'm get extremely like detail oriented and like maybe too nitty gritty on things, and that's just like that's what this channel is.
Yeah, it's a big problem to solve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of overwhelming at times because we're not just starting a race or coming out with a product, right? Like everything that goes into a league or a series, like I have to think about it, and if not produce it, have a plan for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, think about any major league sport in America and everything that entails. Like if that's where we want to get one day, and so we have
Mm-hmm.
to have an idea for it. But solving for the in-person thing, like I think that you know there's just so much potential in cycling, and it's a sport of marginal gains, not only in performance, but like in the way that we've sort of boxed ourselves into thinking about how it can be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that what we're doing is I say, my team and I, my team
Mm-hmm.
being my wife, Claire, my team and I, we're like, I put on events for 10 years and I would be dumb not to have learned anything in that time, right? Uh, there's putting on like events like on a street, like a crit, like they're
Mm-hmm.
great, but that space is not designed for those events. So it's very expensive and cost
Mm-hmm.
inefficient to set that up. Um, and if you're trying to replicate these events, like do multiple events, there's no economy of scale. Like if you were
Right.
starting a business producing a product, you would expect the cost to go down
Mm-hmm.
the more you start producing that thing, right? Like that's just how businesses are supposed to work.
Mm-hmm.
Cycling events, the way they're currently formatted, don't work that way.
Right.
But by moving it into venues that are purpose built for like events, first the go-kart tracks and second bigger spectator areas that we can get to,
Sure.
I think that like putting the spectator forward, that's going to be the unlock to this because cycling is very thrilling.
Right.
It has so many things that people could latch onto, like really get into. It's just not been presented in a way that is appealing to an American audience.
Yeah. I think I agree with a lot of that, and I also like a thought that I've had about it. I did read the business plan that you sent, and I've been kind of like chewing on all those thoughts, and the quick conversations we had at Tulsa talking about a lot of these things, how broadcast can be changed and all that. I've been kind of mulling all that stuff over, and one thing I've thought about is like it's not necessarily either or. I think a lot of times it's everybody's like oh, gravel is the thing, or like this thing will be the one thing. I kind of see there needs to be this continuum, and the problem in cycling is like we don't have, for fandom, there's not a like training wheels part of the continuum. Like we don't have like the
Yes.
Strider bike version of of cycling fandom where you can just immediately plug in and start understanding who people are, what the race dynamics are, that can kind of like stair step you into giving a shit about a 3 week stage race.
That's absolutely right. And like looking at a much longer timeline and a much bigger picture, I think that there's two things that, at the very least, two things that every major league sport has. One is a professional aspirational league, and the second is a youth development league, right? Like we have NICA
Mm-hmm.
here in the US, but it's not as ubiquitous as like Little League is for baseball. And
Yep.
we definitely don't have a cohesive, unified professional aspirational league. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for cycling to be something that is a serious pursuit, just like baseball or football or basketball, it needs both of those things because you, as a kid, every kid in America has a bike, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it transcends all socioeconomic, like all demographics. Every kid has
Yep.
a bike, but it falls off because people get into team sports. And I think part of that continuum that you're talking about, it's broken in cycling because there's not that professional aspirational league for kids to look at and say, I want to be Jonathan Crane one day. You know, he's my
Dude,
hero. I want to
aim
be him.
higher.
Whether or not that happens, you know, who's to say? But like
Yeah.
having that as a legitimate thing that somebody could achieve,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's incredibly important for the development of the sport.
That actually make I agree, and then that brings another thing into my brain that I've thought about. You mentioned a lot in the business plan talking about kind of the different like demographics and market fit. Like fixed gear racing kind of brings a whole different vibe, and that's how I got into the sport. I bought a Schwinn Varsity, which was not fixed gear, to commute to class, and it had friction shifters, which I couldn't understand. Like I couldn't get it to stay in a gear because they weren't not indexed. So at some point I was like, ah, fuck this. I don't want gears, and I got rid of them and got a fixed gear because I grew up skateboarding and I was seeing all of the SF guys who had ruined their hips and ankles getting into fixed gears, and I was like, oh, that looks fun. And it was the same time like Mash videos, Maka Frama, all that stuff was coming out. So it kind of all came together for me, but like I don't think I would have made the leap. I remember saying like, oh, I'll never be one of those guys who like rides in the spandex. I was like, even at the point that I was like, I want to go ride whatever 40 miles or like do group rides and stuff. I would go out there and like jorts and a t-shirt, like on my fixed gear and do group rides. Um,
We basically have the same path.
right. But it's because that's what I want to talk about is there's like this cultural niche that fixed gear sits in that is not part of the continuum. Again, it's like you're talking about that drop off in age. It's like acceptable when you're a kid, and there's not like a cool teenage version of cycling as it is right now. Like NICA is a little bit more of the baseball, but there's not like this could potentially I can see like make it cool, honestly. Be cool with groups that it's not cool with now.
Yeah, I went to a conference at Specialized last year. I don't know if it was a conference. It was like the Outright Foundation gave a presentation,
Hmm.
and they have done studies, and they found that, and I don't think this would come as a surprise to you, that kids are influenced by what their friends are doing, right? So if their
Yeah.
friends are water painting, they're more likely to water paint, right?
Hmm.
Sorry, my son just turned 5 and he got water paints for his birthday, so that was the first thing that popped into my mind.
Right.
But like kids will do what their friends are doing, right? It's
Yeah.
just that that's what kids do.
Hmm.
So making that, making the bike thing cool, I think that's absolutely necessary. Um, and like what better vehicle than a fixed gear bike? The
Yeah.
culture itself is a lot closer to like skateboarding. So it's
Hmm.
got this element of danger and like hipness, uh, kind of anti-establishment. It's got that whole vibe going for it,
It's the
and
thing
then
that traditional road cycling like totally lacks culturally. Like when you look at like a European road team, that's the most like all of these guys are exactly the same guy and none of them has any personality. And it probably took me like 4 or 5 years of wanting to care about it to like actually get to a point where I was like, I can differentiate these people and I kind of like see the storylines going on within this.
Yeah, and once you get there, it definitely rewards you for having put in the work.
But it's so
But it's a
opaque.
really steep learning curve, right? And you
Yeah.
really have to want to get into it.
And the bottom
Um,
of the curve almost doesn't exist. It's not like a steep learning curve. It's like a 90-degree angle, you know? Like
and
there's,
with people sitting up there like pushing you down, not wanting you to participate,
yeah,
gatekeeping and whatnot. But
right.
on the other side of the coin of the culture is just the equipment, right?
Hmm.
There's the fixed gear bike. Like you got into it. It sounds like a lot of other people, it was really inexpensive.
Yeah.
My first fixed
400
gear bike was a
bucks.
conversion because I got a
Hmm.
frame and it didn't have any wheels. I couldn't afford to put a group set on it. So the dude at the bike shop was like, oh, I'll just make it a fixie. I was like, what the hell is a fixie? So that's how I got started in this, right? Like I just needed a bike. And I think you know, that's the story that a lot of my friends in the scene tell.
Hmm.
Versus when I go over to my road team, which I ride for Mike's Bikes, by the way.
Yeah.
Shout out Mike's Bikes.
Yeah.
When I go ride with my roadie friends, like a lot of them, like kind of parachute they come into the sport after they're done being competitive in other sports,
Hmm.
right? Like cycling wasn't their first choice. It might not have been their second or third choice. It's just kind of how they found their way and they found community. But
Right.
I think like the equipment and the culture, that's what really sets us apart. And in my estimation, like is helping us lay the groundwork for future success.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. The equipment piece is like another piece of that puzzle where road cycling, like the barrier to entry has become, it's always been high. I couldn't have started in road racing if I wanted to. I couldn't have afforded a road bike at the time. And that's only continued to escalate, in recent years with everything being electronic, hydraulic. You can't go get a CAD 9 with 105 used for 800 bucks and go race. You actually can do that. I encourage everyone to get one of those and go do that, but it's, seen as like you're at a technological disadvantage or whatever. Um, but yeah, fixed gear really like, and the format of these kart track races, I'm assuming it's pretty technical. So it's going to be less, like aerodynamics is going to play a part, but you can get a fairly aero fixie for 700 bucks complete, like, you know, off
Yeah, I
the
mean,
shelf.
you're not going to find Dan Bigham sniffing around our races, right? Because basically has nothing to do with it.
Right.
Well, it has a little, but not nearly as much.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about risk taking and skill, like handling. It's
Mm-hmm.
not about who has the biggest engine or highest watts to kg, right? Like
Yeah.
it really rewards people who will take those risks and put themselves on the line. There are crashes, and I know all of the audience are like, oh, bike racing, crashes, it's super dangerous. The speeds are low enough that people just fall over and then they hop back up and they get on their bikes again and keep
That's
going.
what I always tell people about cyclocross. Like I have a lot of roadie friends or what, people that race crits and stuff who I'm like, you should race cyclocross. It's fun. And they're like, oh no, don't you like fall all the time? It's like, yeah, but you're on grass and you're going, like, I'll average 13 miles an hour for a race. So like I can fall 50 times. I've never, knock on wood, I have never seen anyone break a bone in a cyclocross race. And I've been racing cross for 11 years now. I've seen a lot of broken bones in road, crit, gravel, mountain bike. Um, so yeah, the like it takes a little bit of what I like from cross, which is the repeatable technical aspects. Like there's a lot to look at and break down there, and then also taking some of the danger of like huge catastrophic crashes, you know, taking that down like 3 or 4 notches, I
Yeah.
think is good.
No, I've
Um,
never raced cyclocross, but I love watching it. I love
you
spectating
should.
it. Like I think so. The we essentially so this whole project is broken up into two phases. The first phase is putting events in go-kart tracks. The company that we're working with has indoor go-kart. They're all indoors. So we could do one in like Chicago in February, they're weather agnostic, right? So we're
Right.
we're the idea is to like fill in around the edges of the traditional seasons, cycling season here in America. Like in the February, March, and then at the end of the season, like we're doing now. But the second phase of this is putting crits in stadiums, like not around stadiums as people have been doing, but like
Right.
actually in stadiums. And it gets back to centralizing that race action, catering to the spectators.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that is the broadcast piece, which you mentioned earlier. In the go-kart tracks, it's super easy to capture because of the tight enclosed circuit. And then in stadiums, it's like custom built for broadcast. In crits, in on cross races, like on gravel,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, like it's so hard to capture for broadcast. It's very expensive because for crits you have to set up and go send the signal around buildings. Um, but broadcast is where the money is. Like the ASO knows that. That's why they are keeping all the money and not giving it to any of the teams, right? Like they make so
Right.
much money. Um, but what I wanted to say is to get back to what you were saying about cyclocross. Like my dream for this is in the summer to have crits in stadiums, and then in the winter do a cyclocross series. Like
Oh,
how
that'd be
amazing would
cool.
it be to race cyclocross in front of 40,000 cheering fans in like
Right.
the dead of winter in like Gillette Stadium or something?
Mm-hmm. Like Supercross or something,
Yeah,
but it's bikes. People are pedaling. Yeah, that
absolutely.
that makes sense to me. So that you kind of touched on two of my. I told you I had some like harder hitting questions, and that's a decent
Bring them on.
transition to a couple of them. So the first one I'm gonna say, I think one of the biggest like hurdles that you guys have to clear is just like how many times, uh, even just the audience of this podcast, but like cycling audiences in America have been burned with like this is the new league, this is the new thing, and I feel like the boy who cried wolf a little bit, like bringing the new thing to people and trying to I feel like I'm not trying to necessarily drum up support. I'm trying to like look at all these things with a critical eye and say this could potentially be good. Here's what they're doing, but how is this not the NCL?
How is this not the? Oh, you said the name.
Yeah,
So first of all, I'm not promising anything. I think that what we're doing is
it's a
good
good
and it has a
start.
lot of promise. Um, I am putting myself and my wife and my family, like we are putting everything into this. So like I am personally invested, mind, body, soul, and bank account. um, the NCL is really interesting, right?
Yeah,
Like so, I was first and foremost, I was bummed that they didn't find success because I think that more more cycling stuff is going to be better for all of us,
yeah,
regardless of what that looks like. Um, I think my main issue was that they didn't know the sport and they didn't know the culture, and
yeah.
they came in like a tech startup trying to disrupt this space.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm in a group with all the top race promoters in the country. It's called the National Association of Professional Race Directors,
Hmm.
and a number of the members, like who have decades of experience, reached out to the NCL when they first, people first found out about them,
Hmm.
and they were turned away and basically said, "No, we've got this. We don't need your help," which was a bit arrogant, you
Yeah,
know? Like, even so, like, what's the harm of just taking the meeting just to
right.
learn what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Um, I've been listening to some of their podcasts. I went and found like an old podcast, and it turns out the business plan was drafted by the Harvard Business School, which I was like, if they can't make it work, like what's the deal? I think that they were offering a product that nobody was really asking for,
Hmm.
right? And that's not unusual, where you can come to market with something and basically find an audience. I think where we differ is I've got 10 years of racing, promotion experience under my belt. Like
Hmm.
we've built this big following, like big for cycling, through our grassroots events, right? Like we've
Yeah,
laid a really solid foundation. The events we put on, like people know us, like it's a known quantity.
yeah,
um,
definitely.
we are taking a big swing with this, and so who knows? Like I really hope we find success. If not, we're going to have a really fucking awesome party tomorrow, on Friday. Um, I think there's a lot of potential. In the process of this, I will say, a lot of things have been lining up really, really well. We've been able to get a lot of really amazing people working for cheap or for free because they believe in the product. They believe in what we're doing. And there's a lot of good energy and a lot of things pointing in the same direction. So like somebody is going to come along, probably funded by like the Saudi investment fund, and put criteriums in stadiums, and it's going to be very
Right.
successful. I think that it should be us, and I think that that time should be now, because now is the right time, and I don't think that there is anybody better in the country or the world to put on an event or series of events that resonates with the people that matter, and that's the people who are listening to your podcast or your sorry
I did
this
it too. You're in the clear.
this not podcast.
It's a show. Uh,
Yes, the show.
no, I agree. I mean, I think again, I'm like teeing you up a little bit. I kind of know I know what I think is different, and I think you hit it on the head that you have experience in this world and you understand the challenges. I think the first episode of this show was like Ben and I had been talking about doing a show for a long time because we would have these long conversations about normally about either a race that no one in the world was talking about or about racers that no one in the world was talking about or both, you know, uh, American guys that we encounter in the southeast or see or whatever. And then as NCL was like ramping up, it was like no one is talking about this and no one is covering it, but they're making these insane claims. And so that was the impetus was like we got to dive into whatever this is going to become or not because they're taking some huge swings and a lot of those it's funny to highlight the ones that like totally never came to fruition but um the NCL it became clear to me as we like drilled down on some of that stuff that they had no idea what they were getting themselves into. I think I said it on the first or second episode of the show like there's no way they're going to have a race in DC this year. It was on their calendar and I hit that shot from half court. They clearly didn't know what it takes to put on a race in DC. They were saying they're going to like close down the National Mall. I think while we were doing the show, Ben looked it up and he was like, "Yeah, there's like a 5K that day on the same course." Like they
Yeah.
haven't even done the level of research that we can do in 1 second, much less like understanding the things that you understand having promoted events at a grassroots level and then growing them from there.
Yeah, and that's whatever. They made some mistakes. I think that the biggest difference is that the stakes for them weren't personal,
Right.
right? For me, they are incredibly personal. Not only for the you know potential ruinous financial decisions if this doesn't go
Yeah.
through that we've made, but like I'm a member of the community, right? Like I don't want to
Hmm.
embarrass myself, and I don't want to embarrass the community. Um, So while
Yeah,
I
I
want to
think.
say things like, we're going to change everything, I
Hmm.
I wouldn't be able to show my face anymore
Right.
if I said that and then it didn't come true.
And the difference is that, like, I think giving a shit goes a long way, and you clearly give a shit. So that's like, I think that's a big like check in your favor in terms of the like weighing NCL versus what you're doing column. But like you're saying, you couldn't show your face anymore. Like neither can a lot of the NCL. Obviously not the riders. I no fault of them, but like the organization. I think there's a lot of like persona non grata people who, if they came around again, sniffing around bike racing, people would tell them to take a hike. You don't want that to happen to you because you care about bike racing. Like this is a community you're a part of. But they're like,
That's
yeah,
right.
I don't care. I'll go find another. I'll design a new scheme to separate NBA players from their money.
Yeah, that's not me. Like
Yeah.
the way that I operate and that I kind of always have is like the way that I've been describing it is like I've got this like this splinter in my brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have identified something that I think should exist and nobody else is doing it, right? Like I would love if somebody else would take on all this risk and do it, but
Right.
nobody's doing it, so
Mm-hmm.
it's on me. And for this particular thing, like, through the experience of putting on these other events, it was like, have you ever had this moment, Jonathan, where kind of the clouds parted and the light shone on you and you were dumbstruck because you could just like, you saw something with perfect clarity, like you knew without a doubt that whatever you were saying, like, oh my god, this is it. Like, I can see the future. I can see the future of cycling in
Yeah.
America, and this is it. Whether I do it or somebody else does it, like, this is the way that cycling is going to get popular, and it's going to get really popular. So I want the opportunity to do it, and that's why we're doing this. But Jonathan, ask me questions. I want you to pick apart this thing because I know a lot of your audience is going to be like, well, blah blah blah. Fixed gear bike. So like, let's go.
Right. Yeah. All right. Definitely. How is this not the NCL was the big the big question. I want to say like what riders have you got? Where are you pulling from
Oh my
and
God, we've
why?
got the best fixed gear riders in the world.
Which
We've
are
been for
track
anybody.
riders or
We've got some track riders. We've got some road riders. We've got the crit shit boys out of Texas who,
yeah, I saw that.
we'll see. This is different, but they
Yeah.
talk a big game and we love it because it plays well with the story. We're taking people from all over. One of the most promising riders, I should say, in the defined field is Chelsea Wolf. She rides BMX. She's
Hmm.
from Southern California. She was in the Olympics in Tokyo, I believe. So I think that there's a lot of crossover between like BMX, the skills required to excel in that discipline, and
Hmm.
what's going to be required to excel here. We've got some track riders, some crit riders. Like, that they can go fast in circles if they've got gears and brakes. But what happens when we take those away?
Right.
What happens when the heats are really short and the gears are really tiny? And, like, we'll see. I think it's going to be a really interesting mashup because this is a new discipline. Like, people
Yeah.
aren't used to it yet. One of our
I
top
agree.
riders in the expansive field is Frank Martucci, who has the honor of having the most appearances at Red Hook, more than anybody else.
More
And
than
he
Dan
debuted the
what's his
other day.
name? The guy who won it, like
Chabanov.
he won the yes, Chabanov won the first several. More than
Yep.
Chabanov? Because I know he was like there for the first one and kind of
So
continued.
appearances.
Okay. Not
Yeah,
wins,
appearances, not
appearances,
necessarily
starts.
podiums. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. So he came out. He is sponsored by Canyon. Canyon doesn't have an aluminum track bike. They just have that super duper
Hmm.
bike that the Danes rode um,
Right.
to great success in the Olympics.
Hmm.
So he got one of their like downhill mountain bikes or something, and
Hmm.
retrofitted it to have one fixed gear, and
Whoa.
no brakes, with drop bars. So
Yeah.
like, people are taking risks. We've been talking to a number of bike manufacturers, like potential sponsors, and we really think that there is the possibility here to like pioneer some new technology. Everybody who's into bikes really loves that. What if we had
Hmm.
a bike with like a shorter wheelbase and a higher bottom bracket or something like that, um, and really like, you know started driving the technology this way.
Yeah, I
I think that'd be
think
fun.
on this show's channel in general, I think getting into the like super particular stuff about what's going on in these races is what's exciting, and or that's like what animates me. I think is like finding a thing that no one is talking about. I think like talking cross, the one of the things that initially like really hooked me was the Bill Shiken the Svenness videos where he would take like clips of two guys riding the same feature, put them next to each other, and say like, put a timer on it, and like this guy's going super wide and this guy's running it, and like which one is faster over time. That kind of like nerdery. I feel like there's going to be a ton of stuff to learn in these first few seasons about like like no one knows what the strategy is. Like thinking about Lucas Bourgogne, the crit shit guys, the way that they have been so successful in the crits this year, we've talked about it a lot on this show, is like a lot of tail gunning and then using the energy at the right time. And I feel like that's not going to be the move here. I think you're probably going to want to get out front earlier, but also like if the whole race is 6 minutes, maybe the whole effort is the same as that effort they use to get to the front and then do the sprint. So it's going to be interesting
I
to like
mean,
see
it's
how all
all
that
about,
shakes out.
yeah. And when you're talking about that, right? Like it makes me think of what we were talking about, you trying to get into cycling, right? And running into the
Mm-hmm.
wall. It's I you know I hope everybody on who's watching this is able to watch the live stream if you're not able to make it in person. But like it's super, it's not hard to comprehend what's going on, right? That being said, there's so much opportunity for those deep dives, like exactly where you're talking about. So I want to work with somebody to create something that like attaches on the stem, right? And my idea for this is it has a light on the top so that there is a visual notification for the rider when they're eliminated, but it
Mm.
also has like what is it, a gyroscope, an accelerometer,
Yeah,
a
all of
camera,
the above,
right? So
maybe.
that we can, yeah, so that we can have all this data,
Mm-hmm.
maybe ties in, uses those zip tire pressure things so that we know what the tire pressure is, know what the lean angle, the velocity, all this
Yeah.
stuff, like this wealth of information that rider or
Mm-hmm.
that, fans can dig into. So it rewards the deep dive that like people like you and me would really get into.
Right.
Um,
Like you
yeah,
see in
yeah,
Formula One. I mean, that's the Formula Fixed.
exactly.
I see the comparison or like how that could be built out. And that is one of the specific promises of NCL that I was talking about that was like never fulfilled to like call one of those out is they promised all of this kind of like data and they hinted around it, but I feel like what they were promising or what I felt like I was hearing was there was going to be some kind of website I could go to as a fan watching and kind of like choose my favorite rider and see their stats in real time, and that just never materialized because I think they assumed it would be easy, and I think they were also promising like a virtual. They partnered with
Where you
RGT, I
could race
know.
with them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was one of the things. Oh yeah, you know,
yeah.
very
Oh, I
few
know.
people like drilled down on that, but I was on RGT. I'm a casualty of the RGT chopping. That was the Wahoo platform that Zwift and
Yeah,
Wahoo made up, and then it got cut. I enjoyed racing on RGT, but so I was like, you know, interested in what that could possibly look like. And again, I think that was a thing that hearing them talk about it, they seemed to assume it was simpler than it was. Like, oh, we'll just put a power meter on everyone's bikes and feed that in or something.
yeah. So talking about the gamification, which I do want to respond to this comment. Matt says, "Is this the same thing Jeff Linder competed in and did a video? It was like cycling mixed with roller derby." Yeah, Jeff is a
Yeah,
friend of mine, and he's come out to a bunch of events that I do, including the Red Bull Short Circuit, which is I think what you're talking about. He and Tyler, the
vegan
artist formerly
cycles.
known as Vegan Cyclist. He's now VC Adventures. They both came out and both years, I think, and they did videos. Those
That's
guys are
I
awesome.
I was showing it for a minute while we were talking.
Okay. Oh, it was the Bay Climb, I think you were showing.
Yes,
And so the plan is to get Alec Briggs onboard footage, and Alec and Jeff are going to sit down and do a race recap video. As long as it goes well for Alec. He's definitely the number one. He's got a target on his back.
yeah,
So we'll see. But so I want to dig into what you were saying about the gamification of cycling, right? So
yes.
one of the things that I did is I have a little experience in it. A
Mm-hmm.
couple years ago, some friends and I started a cycling video game called Hustle City, and I think
Live.
so. Let's see. I haven't talked about this in a
Hopefully,
while. Quick pitch is Swift is a video game that's binding itself to real world rules, right? And a lot of the motivation for doing well in this is extrinsic, right? Like you try to hit a power number or whatever. I think
Mm-hmm.
that gamifying cycling, like what you're showing right now, the motivation is intrinsic, right? You're not trying to hit a power number. You're trying to like get to that next goal or get a
Mm-hmm.
coin or something like that. And when we would test with these riders, they would ride it for, the first episode is like 40 minutes and they'd get off asking how long they rode for. And they're like, oh, 20 minutes, right? I'm like, no, that was like 45 minutes that you were riding. Because they don't think about it. They just play the game. They don't think
Mm-hmm.
about the effort that they're putting in. But I think that there's like immense possibility to gamify cycling, particularly with this fixed gear thing. So actually, my director, who's up here, he's now the head of content for Formula Fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he and a mutual friend of ours, Marcus, was the guy that did this. So I wrote the story, and
Nice.
I was the voice for a couple of characters on this.
Did you pick the
God, I haven't seen
music?
this in forever. Yeah, that was my friend's band.
Really? Okay, I talked about. I was like, someone like this is real music. This is not
Oh
licensed
God,
random crap.
I worked with him. It's just one dude, and I worked with him as a bike messenger in San Francisco.
Nice.
The name is escaping me. I'm so sorry, but I'll get it to you afterwards.
Happy
Um,
Messenger Day, by the way.
yeah, happy 10-9, everyone. So, anyways, the gamification. Did you see the NBA 3-point contest for the All Star game this year?
I'm aware that it
If
happened, but
you
I did not watch it for real.
okay, so they played on a court that was essentially just a giant LED screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine if when we get to stadiums, if the bike race is on one of these things and you have a course that's lit up like that's lit up like
You can
Mario
say
Kart.
whatever. I think
What
we're
if,
past
what
the
if,
point of YouTube demonetizing or whatever.
sorry, what if there's like, coins or power ups or, Jonathan attacks off the front and flames shoot out from behind him?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we are, I mean, of course it's a money thing, but we're like artificially limiting our ideas about what this could and should be. And I really want to stress that this is like, it's sports entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sports should be entertaining. These quick formats, like the integration, like making people happy. Sure, it might not be as serious as the Tour de France right now, but like, you know, I don't know, like who's the arbiter of you know, what's the right way to do something?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I I played through Hustle City and I enjoyed it. So I that was footage for the audio listener. I guess I was throwing up footage that I had from when I streamed the whole thing on Twitch when I played through it.
Man,
It
that had so much potential. It was just it was underfunded.
yeah, I think the timing was also a little bit early into like the technology of again talking about the steep learning curve. Like to get onto indoor cycling, it's really steep curve still, like equipment wise, and I think
Yeah.
the Zwift all-in-one bike is lowering it a little bit, and some of the new trainers that are coming with the one cog that works for everything is lowering it a little bit. But it's like you guys had a product that was like the software was a fit for a hardware market that didn't exist yet, I think. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, we
but it's
tried to
like
run everything off the phone and phones
yeah,
weren't quite there.
I learned I had to put my stuff in do not disturb mode and like exit out of every single I was on a very old iPhone at the moment. And I guess I am again just by virtue of like updating once and
Oh,
now the
yeah.
16's out or whatever.
Well, thank you so much for playing. That was great.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it, but I see a lot of like I agree there's a lot of potential there, and I think it was a similar fit in terms of like there are a lot of people who want to again the like training wheels version, like it was a lot easier to get on that thing and just ride because there was some goal to it other than like I'm staring at Zwift or whatever.
Yeah.
There were it was a lot more engaging, and in the same way that I think or hope that this can be more engaging to the person who like just stepped into I'm gonna watch this. And speaking of people who are gonna watch it and drilling down on the specificity, let's talk about the broadcast and what are your
Yeah.
ideas? We talked a little about this at Tulsa, but like what do you see as the problem with the way races are broadcast and how are you gonna fix that and give us all the specifics? Where can people
Oh,
watch it?
brother. Okay. So I mean, it goes back to the product market fit, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
particularly for spectators, live spectators. Like you can't see the race. So at Tulsa, for instance, they put up those giant screens,
Mm-hmm.
which are great, but they're expensive and they just burn gas. But if you're thinking about the shots on there, like what you usually get are these really long shots down these straightaways.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't give you any sort of frame of reference for where the riders are on the course. Like
Mm-hmm.
it foreshortens everything, so you don't really get the dynamics. And really, what it comes down to is money.
Yeah.
I think that one super easy fix for this, for anybody watching, is putting up. Again, it's money; it costs money, but like figuring out a way with timing chips. I know it's possible because I've been talking to the guys. Put up a map in the corner that has the relative position of all the riders, right? Like it's
Mm.
not hard. I've raced Tulsa twice now. I watch it when I'm not racing it, but
Mm-hmm.
I still can't figure out where the riders are on the course because it all kind of looks the same.
Yeah.
Um,
It was
that's
amazing how
one.
different some of those courses look in person, especially the Saturday course. Like the broadcast gave me no perspective of like how steep some of those hills are on Saturday and
Yeah,
kind
coming
of
down the backside, right?
yeah, you lose so much it's hard to tell too sometimes like how narrow they are. You're losing a lot of the things that actually make the race happen.
Or make it exciting, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are we? Who are we doing this for? To try to expand the audience of people who are more likely going to be competing in the race, right?
Hmm.
Like it's like this closed loop of marketing to the same people, and that's kind of like the problem of cycling in America right now is that it's a participant sport, right?
Hmm.
And I hear a bunch of people wring their hands all the time about like, oh, why isn't it more popular? It's like, well, there's no, like premier product. It's like rec league soccer, right? Like nobody's coming to
Yeah.
spectate because it's just like the people who would be interested in spectating are actually in the race. But like, so the broadcast is, like friends, family, things like that. It tends to not break out of the endemic, very specific endemic market.
Hmm.
Again, not to like beat on cost, like people have been trying to do things that are cost effective, and just to like get something out there. Like, my buddy Gabe did really well. He did a couple of the Pennsylvania races and like Easton Twilight.
Hmm.
I think for the last one, they set up just a camera. There was two cameras in two corners, and they
Oh
had somebody
yeah.
like come with it. It was
I
better
saw
than
that.
nothing. Like I watched
Hmm.
the whole thing, but like you lose so much of it. And it's because of the expansive nature of the courses, right? Like
Hmm.
unless you are really well capitalized, you don't have the budget to get the cameras and the people and everything necessary to put on like a real high quality broadcast. So it's usually either nothing or like scrappy,
Hmm.
or it costs $100,000 to do. Um,
I
and
want to
that's through
shout
no fault
out.
of the.
I see Ray Mars in the chat. He's one of the people who I think has done like the best job in terms of like doing the most with the least. Like those races,
Yes.
I can follow them,
Yeah, and it's the CBR races are easier because it's a four corner office park crit, right?
and that gets at
Um,
your point of sort of simplifying the variables of the environment. Makes it easier to stair step up the quality of the broadcast.
Absolutely. And I think another issue is that when they do put these out for broadcast, the shows are like 6 hours long. At
Hmm.
your last episode, you were talking about how Tulsa went through and they initially published the full thing, but
Hmm.
then they went back and they chopped it up, and then republished those segments, which is cool. But then you still have the original view count on the original ones, but then like the races themselves have
Yeah,
lower view counts, and it's this whole thing. Like,
YouTube
I
doesn't
don't know if
like
that
that.
does anything to drive engagement exactly, right? And
Hmm.
it's all about engagement and impressions. So our idea of making this like centralizing the action, but making it a
Hmm.
show. Like we're going to have qualifiers for 5 hours, but we're only broadcasting 2 hours. We're doing the semifinals and the finals. It's
Right.
the show.
And where are you
There's only
broadcasting it? What?
It's going to be on YouTube. So I think the best place to find it is to go to the website, formulafixed.com. We're going to have links to everything on there. Super
I've
easy
got
to
the
find.
YouTube link down here if you're watching it this on YouTube, and I'll put it in the description of the podcast, the audio version as well. So that's like your primary channel you're pushing it out on.
Yeah. As far as I know, it could change. But
Sure.
we're bringing in Brad Soner is
Awesome.
going to be the main guy behind this. We're also bringing in some talent from the community. Veronica Volok is going to be at the desk with Brad talking about the race, talking about the races. And then we're going to have Nico. Nico works at Zip SRAM.
Yeah.
You may see him
Long
all over.
hair. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
he was a bike messenger in Chicago. He
Did
used to be a Red
Unbound
Bull
fixed gear
athlete.
one year, maybe? Am I
Yeah,
making that
dude, he
up?
does it every year, right? Like the ultra 400 miles on a
Yeah.
on a fixed gear bike.
That's
He's
gnarly.
amazing. He's coming out. He's going to be doing the sideline hits and
Nice.
the in-person interviews and things like that. I'm going to be the MC for the people in person. You're
Cool.
going to get to hear my voice ringing out over the thing. But really leaning into the entertainment and really putting resources and effort into it, making it entertaining and making it a show. And I know I keep saying this, but like 2 hours, like that's the absolute
Hmm.
maximum amount of time anybody's going to sit down and watch something, right?
Yeah, I agree. Um, so what does the broadcast look like from a again, I get like deep into the weeds on this stuff and I talk a lot about camera placement. I'm actually glad to hear you say the thing about the shots, the foreshortening of just looking down the straightaway, because that's one of those things that I talk about constantly. So like what does it look like from a I know it's a cart track, so you could probably see everything from one place. Are we talking about one camera? Are we talking about a fixed camera and a drone, or like what? Can you even get
Oh,
into the? I hope you have those
yeah,
things locked down.
I
I
don't know the
trust that you
exact.
do.
Well, so the cool thing about working with really amazing people is I can say I want to have a broadcast
Hmm.
and let them run with it, right?
Yeah.
So we have got two fixed cameras, two roving cameras, and a drone operator that's talking about doing a drop in from like 1,000 feet up through the front door and starting to
Whoa.
chase the riders. Like he sounds pretty insane.
Nice.
Um, Sorry, there was
Yeah,
a
we got a
thing that,
question in the chat. I'll read
but
it out.
in terms of the like the location of the cameras,
Mhm.
I'm leaving it to the smarter, handsomer people who are better suited to make those decisions.
I think that's good, but it's also I'm glad to hear that you have like multiple things, multiple ways that you're covering it. Fixed camera, roving camera, and drone. I think that all of those things combined with the super compact area and like controllable environment, I think you'll be able to get a good product out of that.
In the future,
Yeah,
sorry not to interrupt, but in the future,
go
like
ahead.
because of the compact nature of the courses,
Hmm.
like when we have more resources, we'll be able to do a ton more stuff of like live onboards. Because
Yeah.
if you think about, like Corey Williams running a camera on his head trying to broadcast
Hmm.
live, he has to bend around buildings.
Hmm.
Um, we don't have to do that, right? Like
Yeah.
we can set up a receiver in the middle and the jumps are really short. So you can get like really crisp, high quality, lag free, mostly lag free footage like right away.
Hmm. I've been saying
And
for
then
a few years, like I think we're on the verge of that technology getting good enough that you could like actually mount your phone to your bars and live stream from it. And it's like we're so close, but that is the last. I mean, people do it like Terry B does it in real life, but he's got a whole rig of.
he's got a whole rig. Yeah.
I
Well,
I, I
uh,
hope the rigs get smaller. I think we'll get there, but
I, so like I have a lot of really cool friends who do a lot of really cool things that I didn't even know about until I start talking to them. I was on my way to track nationals last year, talking to my friend Martin,
hmm.
explaining that during just coming out of COVID, my some friends and I went to Athens to shoot a sizzle for a documentary series that never got made, and we put
Was that
cameras on the
21 or
best buddy
22?
riders. That would have been 21. So Athens was in August. It was awful. It was so
Yeah, I
hot.
was there.
Um, but the director of that is now my head of content, Max Casado,
Cool.
two-time Emmy losing director producer.
Emmy
Uh,
nominated then. I mean, that's
Emmy nominated,
don't sell
exactly.
him short.
So no, he's great. But so I was talking to my friend Martin about this problem where the riders had these cameras on their heads. They got through with the first race at I think it was Birmingham
Yeah,
or the race before
Hammerfest.
Athens.
That's
And
the footage we use for the countdown is my footage from Hammerfest.
okay, so we put it on these riders, and it was amazing footage.
Hmm.
Amazing footage. Like we got Vander Gibbon popping off in the middle of the race. Like it was awesome. But the
Yeah.
riders like, we're never doing this again because it changes the physics of your head, right? Like it
Hmm.
was hurting their necks. So I was telling my friend about this problem and how I wanted to decouple the camera and be able to mount the actual camera and like tuck the stuff in the back. And he's
Hmm.
like, guess what I used to do at GoPro? Like he would do these special projects. He put the camera in the hats for the officials for the
Yeah.
NFL,
Uh-huh.
right? Like he did all these things, so it's possible.
Yeah.
You just have to have the funds and the desire to do it, so to drive the
Right.
technology. But what I would love to do is eventually get to the point where, just like F1, you, Jonathan, sitting at home, could switch between all these different riders who are running these live cameras to get these in race views, right? To reward
Yeah.
you for paying attention and wanting to like dig into this stuff.
This is something that I've been exploring. I think you and I are on the same wavelength on a lot of things, and this is one of them. But I had Davey from Automatic on probably 2 years ago now, and talked about all this stuff on the show. But afterwards, we're spitballing the like, if you would put a GoPro on your bike and live stream, I'm just gonna give away my secret sauce. If someone has made it an hour into the show, you deserve it. So this is what I've been thinking about and still contemplating doing for some crits, but seeing if I could get a team like an Automatic or just a few guys on different teams would honestly be ideal. Or people. I mean, I would love to. I would actually prefer to see this from the women's race because I feel like we get less of a look into that Peloton. But a few people, 4 or 5 people with cameras live streaming, and they live stream to their own Twitch channel or whatever, and they just give me permission to grab those feeds. So I have, if the race has its own feed, I have that, and then I am pulling each of their Twitch streams in as a source, and I can just switch between them. And on my end, like as a third party whatever, I'm sort of like compiling this content and switching between like camera and picture views and going back and forth between different riders. It's your idea makes that a lot easier because you're in a contained area where you can get good Wi-Fi. So
Yeah.
I would love to see something like that.
Sorry. So I think we were going to try to talk about these questions
Yeah,
that have been coming in.
we're getting live questions. So I'll read off this one from Jameson Anton. Formula One is very expressive about tire degradation, lap times, etc. How do you provide that level of data? What is the quantitative equivalent when we say burnt a match?
That's a great question. Like I don't know if we're ever going to get to the point where we can talk about tire degradation, but there's some really basic things that the rider metrics are putting out. Sorry, I don't know if you hear that siren. It's pretty
You're
loud.
good. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Um, yeah, so like rider metrics, power, heart rate, temperature. We could do like people don't talk about this. These are right now with the kart tracks, these are pretty short races. So something like
Hmm.
tire degradation or heat, body temperature is probably not going to do too much in terms of move the needle. But like tire pressure sure will. Lean angle, velocity, like entrance and exit velocity of these turns. Like there's a bunch of ways that we could slice this where people could start, finding things to nerd out about.
Yeah.
Also, like gamble, like bet,
Hmm.
you know. Um,
That's
so
another one of my questions. I don't. I got more on this, but I want to move to the gambling in just a second. Um,
yeah,
I think there's a combination of the last couple of things we were talking about, which is like each rider has their own camera. You can overlay their metrics from OBS, but you could also have uh, like gear ratio. So if you're the fan and you have this smorgasbord of like I can go on board with whatever rider I want, you can say who's winning right now. You pop over to their page and you see their power. You see, I like things about enter and exit, like speed and velocity of turns, because you could sort of tally that up over time and see who's saving energy versus burning matches. I could also see quantifying like the features Zwift just added that just kind of it's just a little bar that shows you how much time you spent in each zone. And if you just ride easy, it stays gray or whatever, and it's blue or it goes up. Like you could have each rider, make them do an FTP test live as part of the thing or something. Have everybody do a ramp test at the beginning, and then that sets the
yeah.
number, and everyone's data is judged against that, or self-report an FTP or whatever. Um, Another question from Ray Mars himself: how much different is this compared to the Rad Race series?
Uh, if you're talking about the last man standing, which happens once a year. It differs because we're not in Germany.
Yeah, this is the American Peloton, so we're not allowed to talk about the rad race. Um, I had another question that has just let. Oh, gambling. Yes, let's get into that. I mean, I
Sure.
think the Kieran is another like example of talking about like how do we get non-endemic people to care. Um,
Yeah.
Kieran has done that. So, what about that? Have y'all thought about that?
Kieran is an $11 billion a year industry, right? It's hard to ignore that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that when it comes to like you compare it to tech, like that's nothing. But when it comes to sports, like that's nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
Track cycling at the turn of the 20th century was the most exciting sport in the country. Madison Square Garden was built to host the Madison, the
Yeah.
the bike races, which not to backtrack, but I got third at Masters Madison Nationals last year in the 35 plus
Nice.
category. So yeah, that's what's up. I don't think
Podium.
I'm going to be able to make it this year.
Oh man.
But gambling, so they outlawed gambling on bike races, and killed killed the sport.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I don't know what just happened, Ray. Um, I
We're still
think that
seeing each other, so I think we're good.
so I lived I lived in Canada for a year during the height of the pandemic, and I came
Mm-hmm.
back, and I was absolutely shocked to see that Major League Baseball was promoting gambling.
Yeah.
I grew up playing baseball. The whole Pete Rose thing. One of my favorite players was Shoeless Joe Jackson from the 1919 White Sox, who was banned from allegedly gambling on the outcome of the World Series in 1919.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was dumbfounded that Major League Baseball was pushing gambling. It's like, how could this, what's the deal?
Right. What changed?
I don't necessarily think like that's a personal decision. I don't gamble, except with my future. I don't gamble with money.
Yeah.
So like that, that's a personal decision that people have to make, but it's hard to ignore the popularity of gambling at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that it is a great way to get more attention on the sport,
Yeah.
especially at this nascent stage where we are, where we're, like pretty vulnerable in terms of like survival. So I think that more attention is going to be great. And if you think about it, the more attention we get, the better, bigger sponsors we can get, which allows us to do more marketing, which gets us more attention. It's just this positive feedback cycle.
Yeah.
It just makes everything better. So that's definitely one part of our approach.
Even outside of gambling with money, I was just about a month ago on a podcast called the Fantasy Cycling Podcast, which is two guys that literally they break races down and talk about their fantasy teams. I mean, they're talking about the sport purely through a lens, and they're talking mostly Grand Tours and stuff, World Tour racing, but through a lens of fantasy cycling. Like, what do they're not bookies because it's they play on an actual money. It's using virtual, but it gives them
Mhm.
reason to care about things in a race that you wouldn't normally care about. And I did the Vuelta just like as a result of like being on the podcast. I created a team for the Vuelta, and it made me a lot more invested in whether or not Ben O'Connor was going to hold on. And it makes you watch kind of the races within the race, kind of the things that you might not be paying attention to, like does that person hang on to the KOM jersey for another day? There's a deeper level of engagement with that. So not to put more
Yeah, and I think
complications on you.
no, like all the things that we were talking about the technology, right, and the measurables, that all feeds into this possibility, right? Like, and so we could do fastest lap time. Um, you can run the odds like in the moment. So you have a new line of people line up, and the odds change like
Hmm.
depending on who's in that heat. The
Yeah,
odds change depending on who exits the heat first.
and you could
There's
have
like so many different variables. Like it's really
hmm
cool.
you could
And
have
yeah, it
prop
doesn't
bets on
necessarily need to be
things.
money or
Yeah, like
prop bets. Thank you.
is there a crash in this heat? Is there endless things. I mean, one of my favorite ones, RIP, an app that doesn't exist anymore, but roller derby spelled like rouleur, like the way a cyclist would spell it.
Yeah,
They would always do, will there be a livestock related crash in the Tour de France this year? It was like a prop bet you could make every year.
amazing.
Yeah, so that's a fun, like, I mean, you could do a prop bet of like, will anyone drop a chain? Is anyone gonna go over the bars? Like, there's so many things you could so many things. It will anyone hit, I don't know, 1,500 watts, and then you just have a thing on screen the whole time that's like you can see everyone's watts going up, and it's like if it if it goes over, if
Your
it
heart rate's going up too. Yeah.
yeah, if it dings the bell, you won the bet or whatever. Well, this is all super exciting. I mean, I think people may again, I feel a little bit like the boy who cried wolf. Because when NCL was happening, I did like approach it with I mean, I think we were clowning on it a little bit from stage one, but I did say like I'm gonna watch these races and I'm gonna report what happens. And I was a big proponent of like NCL Atlanta was an interest. It was one of the most interesting races of last year, I think, on the criterium
Yeah, and
side.
you were the only person there
I think we were
trying
some
to
of the only
watch the
press
race, right?
passes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was a very weird environment, but a good race. Definitely like a cool weird experience. But I think there were a lot of people who, we were all skeptical, and a lot of people wanted to kind of like shove it down my throat of like, yeah, the NCL failed. And it's like we all saw this coming, but I didn't want it to. Like I wanted those riders to. That was the biggest piece for me is I wanted the riders to be taken care of. NCL was one of the only ways that was happening. Um, so yeah, I feel a little bit like the boy who cried wolf, telling everybody like get out here and check out Formula Fixed. But I do think, that sorry, I'm winding down and I'm seeing the chat. This is the folly of doing it live. Ray Mars is wondering about the non-answer about the Rad Race. So this is very similar to Rad Race.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the same format basically. The point
Yeah.
structure is probably a little different, and the total number of
I don't,
racers, I would think. The
yeah, I think
broadcast is different.
I don't know how they do the finals or anything, and I don't know if they do points, but yeah, it's like it's an elimination race on an indoor go
I
kart
think
track.
the other thing that I'm hearing that's different is that like the way the coverage is going to be done is a little bit more. I don't think I've ever seen like you know, here's the finals of Rad Race. If that has existed, it's never made its way to me, and not with commentary. So it's kind of bridging the gap between something that I think like Red Hook and a lot of the fixed gear events struggled with, that like all of the coverage is from influencers or people's onboard videos after the fact, or like a traditional sort of like watching sports live coverage thing. It sounds like you're doing both, which is something that I don't think anyone's ever done a good job of both. It's always been kind of one or the other or both, but one is really bad.
Well, I hope we do a good job. This is the first time that we've done it, and we're all throwing it together.
This is the
But
test
like
event.
the
Yeah.
bar is pretty low,
Yeah.
so I think that we're going to be successful regardless. Yeah, no, Rad Race is great. They do 4 events throughout the year, one of which is a go kart track based elimination race.
Hmm.
Um, I think that there's a lot of potential in this format, and so I think that that's why we're driving forwards with this.
And I think if you guys, I mean, to the point, to bring the podcast sort of full circle, I think the show, damn it, I did the same
The
thing.
show.
Uh, to bring it full circle to the thing I mentioned at the top, which was like the Red Bull Bay Climb format was, sort of caught the zeitgeist, and there were people in Alabama replicating it, which didn't take away from what you were doing. It made all of us more aware of Bay Climb. There were people who did it who like were like, "Why is this a thing?" It's like, "Oh, it's like a Red Bull Bay Climb," and then they're going and looking it up. I think, not to say that you will see a ton of people putting on races on go kart tracks, but I think if you guys are really successful and have a good whatever you want to call it, reach outside of endemic cycling, I think and I hope you'll see people putting on sort of grassroots, like, okay, let's find our own whatever, whether it's a parking lot with some cones or whatever, but like more grassroots fixed gear racing that is not aspiring to overtake you, but inspired by people are going to want to get out there and do it. And the ultimate aspiration, it's like people playing baseball in your local park are not trying to dethrone the MLB, but they probably watched MLB and said, baseball looks fun, let's play
Yeah.
baseball.
Yeah, I really hope so, because at the end of the day, whether or not we're successful, I want more people to be on bikes. Like, I ride bikes, I race bikes, I commute. Well, not commute, but I like ride my son around the city on a bike.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's great. I think that the more people on bikes, the better. So if we can inspire people to get on bikes and to do their own races, like, I think that that is amazing. Like, there are people who are doing these go-kart track races all over. You might not see them, but like, I get tagged in them. In
Mm-hmm.
South America, they're really popular. In Asia, they're really popular.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the for all the reasons that we talked about, I think that they are appealing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I
There's
said,
definitely
I think
growth
that
potential.
there is growth potential, and not to toot our own horn, but like, I think we're doing it in a smart way,
Mm-hmm.
in a controlled way. And I really think that, I don't want to say we're the future of cycling, but like, there's space for everybody. I think that the tour is always going to be the tour. I think that Tulsa Tough and crits are a great thing, and I continue to participate in them.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's room for the pie's big enough. There's more than enough room for something else.
If it
We're not
wasn't
gonna
for
we're not gonna
the like the red hook and that type of stuff, I wouldn't be racing crits now. So I think for the people now who like there's nothing for them to grab onto in the same way. Like there's an entire generation of people that that's passing by.
I want to bring the magic back.
Yeah. There definitely was that period where there was some magic in the fixed gear world, and I think there's definitely potential. And yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I think that's also a good point is you guys are actually having a test event. I think that's another like important distinction of how is this not the NCL was like kind of my big overarching question of this episode. The fact that you're not coming in and saying in our first season we're going to take over and we're going to do 10 races and they're all going to be super complicated to put on and blah, like you are doing a test event, you're going to learn, and you have done events before, so you have some knowledge to back it up. I think that's wise and gives me a little bit of more faith than I had in the NCL that you're taking a wiser approach, I think.
Well, it's going to be my goal to not let you down.
If you do, you're going to hear about it. We're going to do a whole
Oh
episode.
boy, oh boy, will I.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
have to move out of the country.
That'll be the good clickbait title will be how James Grady let me down. Like a really hilariously edited picture of your face.
All
Cool,
right,
man.
unless you have any other hot questions,
Yeah,
I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for
yeah.
everyone listening. And I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate this. I appreciate what you and Ben do, because there's a need for it. Like,
Thanks.
I listen to everything because there's not enough American focused cycling content out there.
Yeah, same here. I think I told you. I think that was before the episode. I told you that I listened to your episode of Sitting In. I encourage everybody to go listen to that. But
On 1.5 speed. It's long. Sorry.
I never apologize for a long show. I'm trying to do 14, 15 hours a week or something on the bike. That's a lot of time to slam podcasts, and I would rather have too much than not enough. I would rather end my ride and be like, oh, there's 30 minutes left, than be in the middle of an interval and be like, oh, they're winding down. What am I going to listen to now?
Absolutely. Although I don't know how you can do intervals on podcasts. I was doing
I'm a psycho.
some VO2 max on, and like the Lioness by Songs Oh Hi
Hmm.
came on, and I was just like, I had to stop. I couldn't do it.
That's why I can't do music. It's because I can't program that much music and I need it to like ebb and flow perfectly
Jock
with what I'm
jams,
doing.
baby. Jock jams. Hey, I've got a great playlist for Formula Fixed. I'll send it to you, and you can see what you think.
Awesome. Well, I'm
It might be too
excited about
mainstream for
that.
you. Formulafix.com. Go there. You can find links for everything. You can see all the racers who are throwing themselves into the gaping maws of I don't know, whatever. I'm tired, man. We
The
drove down
future
from
of,
San Francisco today.
yeah. Well,
Don't
thanks
say
for
the
being
future of
here.
cycling. Yeah,
Future
it's
of
been my
fixed
pleasure.
gear racing. I think that's fair to
There we
say.
go.
The future
There
of
we go.
American fixed gear racing.
How about the near future?
The near future of, I'm going to change the title of this episode to the near future of American fixed gear racing. All right,
Awesome.
man.
Thanks.
Thanks.